Hello and welcome back to KXAN Live. I'm your anchor, Esmeralda Zamora, and today we have our Simple Health segment with KXAN's Jose Torres. Jose, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Esme. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us. Before we start, I'd like to explain to everyone what Simple Health is and why we do it here at KXAN. Can you help me explain that?
Sure. Sometimes we overthink things and make things overcomplicated, whether that's fitness, nutrition, or medical procedures. So we try to bring light to those type of stories and make it less stressful for you and empower you with information.
Yes, and make things a little simpler for people to understand, right? Well, today's conversation has to do with the NCAA's March Madness tournament that is happening right now. And what people are saying is that this time of year usually sparks an increase in vasectomies. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's all thanks to strategic marketing because there's been this connection between March Madness and an increase of vasectomies this time of year between March and the early weeks of April. So this marketing has been around since at least the 90s, since I can remember. And in 2014, then this trend started to pop up called Vas Madness. So I spoke with Dr. Sarah Vidge. She is an associate professor of surgery, and she's a urologist at UT Health Austin. And so we had a pretty awesome conversation. I learned a few things. And so as this, marketing that ties in March Madness with vasectomies, she told me that, the men that she's come across at her office, they're really not basketball fans, and here's why.
I think this all started because a few clinics realized that if they promoted vasectomy in March and hey, you're going to get a couple days to kind of lay low and there's sports on all day long. And I think everyone's sort of followed suit. And so there's a lot of marketing at clinics all around the country around this. And in my experience, when guys come in March, I'll sort of say, hey, are you here because you want to watch March Madness? And a lot of them say no. I think it's just the marketing reminds men that this is something they've been meaning to do. I think a lot of patients tend to kind of have it on their to-do list and keep kicking the can. So it just gets it front of mind and gets them in. And secondary benefit, you have some good sports to watch. Uh,
And what did she say were the risks for these vasectomies?
So I guess with any procedure, there are some risks, and she explains why. So I asked her about that, and she explains why. And I also asked her, does this procedure, after the procedure, does it affect sexual performance in men? And so we talked about that, and we also talked about how vasectomies compare to the procedure that women take, which is tubal ligation. And here's her answer to that.
the risks of a vasectomy are really mostly sort of short-term risks. So things like bleeding, skin infection, and epididymitis, which is a little infection or sometimes just inflammation in the epididymis, the sperm storage structure that would present as some pain. Um, there is a small risk, probably 1% of prolonged testicular pain. So that's obviously something we try to avoid, and we do have treatments for it when that does happen. Thankfully, it's rare. There is not an increased risk of sexual dysfunction. A lot of patients ask that, is it going to affect their erections or anything? And the answer is no. There's not an increased risk of prostate cancer. So it's mostly just short-term typical surgical risks. The female sort of parallel to a vasectomy would be a tubal ligation, blocking egg flow, just like we're blocking sperm flow. Because of where the fallopian tubes in a woman are located, they're in the pelvis, so that procedure does require entry into the abdomen, generally anesthesia, so it is higher risk. That can be done at the time of a C-section, so that's, an upside to it. But vasectomy is nice in that it's an office procedure, local anesthetic. We're not going into the abdomen. It's very quick, generally a few minutes per side, and the recovery is generally just a couple days of laying low. You can walk around, but just nothing vigorous and spending some time icing.
And does this specific procedure require a stay at the hospital?
That's the good part. It doesn't, and it actually just takes the actual procedure takes about 10 minutes. But when you factor in, driving to the clinic or checking in, filling out those forms, it could take between 45 minutes to an hour, and then you can just drive home after that. But there is um, instances when you're not able to drive home, and the doctor here explains why.
Patient arrives, they get checked in, they do the typical intake that you get when you see a doctor, get the patient into a gown onto the table, get them prepped, draped. The procedure itself is less than 10 minutes. And then, they'll check vital signs, make sure that they're, feeling good after the procedure, get them dressed, that kind of thing. So, they may end up being in the office for 45 minutes to an hour, but the procedure itself is kind of a small percentage of that time. And then they can drive themselves to and from, unless they elect to take an anxiety medicine to help calm their nerves if they are nervous. So, small percentage of my patients will do that just to help them get through it. In that case, you need a driver. But for most patients, they're driving themselves in and out. So there's not a lot of disruption to schedules, and if there's small kids at home, their partner can be home, versus a general anesthetic, you need a driver.
And lately, there has been an increase in vasectomies over the last few years. Why is that, Jose?
So, doctors or urologists and researchers, they noticed this trend that happened in the summer of 2022. And that was when the Supreme Court made its ruling on Roe v. Wade. And so you'll hear her here mention about a study that she was a part of.
We saw after Roe v. Wade was overturned, we saw a significant increase. Just anecdotally, we all felt like we were seeing more consults, younger patients, more childless patients, and several academic centers around the country looked at this. We published our experience when I was at the Cleveland Clinic, and it was a pretty substantial uptick in consultation. So just hearing about the procedure and then the follow through. We thought maybe they're just going to hear about it and they're not going to follow through. The follow through was no different than pre Roe v. Wade. So I think there's not been, as far as I'm aware, updated data on whether that trend has persisted, whether it was just kind of a burst because it was in the news and things have settled back to pre. And I don't know that anybody knows whether it varied by geographic region. Again, some places had more restrictive abortion laws than others, and so that may have driven changes. So, but certainly if you ask any vasectomist around that time, it was, couldn't, doors were, patients constantly coming through interested in a vasectomy around that time.
So you heard her mention about the study she was a part of with the Cleveland Clinic, and so I have a link to that on this web story. And I also have a link to a recent study that was done last year. And the study found that there's a rise in men who are 18 to 30 years old, and they are getting the procedure. So I have the link to that, and that also is tied to the ruling of Roe v. Wade. So I wanted to know, I asked the doctor, is there a change in perception when it comes to reproductive rights?
When we talk about reproductive rights, reproductive care, everybody tends to think about women. And obviously, a male plays just as important of a role. And a vasectomy, is really the main way that a man can take full control in preventing a pregnancy, right? I mean, there's condoms, but most birth control really falls to the female. And so, I think the fact that more and more men are coming in for this procedure, again, whether it's politically related or not, I think speaks to the fact that there's more awareness that men play a part and that men can take some control if they don't want to have an unintended pregnancy that they're then, financially responsible for, and that they have a step that they can take. Whereas I think, 50 years ago, it was just really thought to be a woman's burden to bear. And I think that's changing.
So on this web story, I have links to the to those two separate studies that we mentioned earlier. And also, you'll find there why not every man is a candidate for a vasectomy. So that was really interesting hearing the doctor explain why that is the case. And so you can find this story on our Simple Health section. And just go to KXAN.com and click on that tab.
Yes, it's on our homepage. You can find it right at the homepage or, like he mentioned, in the Simple Health tab. Thank you for sharing this story. I bet you had so much fun learning about all this in depth around vasectomies and especially how it ties into March Madness. That's really interesting, the promotion there.
Yeah, strategic marketing for sure. And yeah, I had a lot of fun learning about this about vasectomies. New things that I didn't expect.
And March Madness is not the only time that people can get vasectomies, right?
Oh yeah, they can get it any time of year. And another month or season where vasectomies are high, or when people go seek a vasectomy, is during the holidays, because recovery time. We can, you usually have the holidays off, and you can spend that time, recovering at home with your families.
Yep, strategic planning right there too.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Jose. Thanks for sharing this story, and we're excited to see what topic we cover next Monday.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you.